Everyone. As some of you know, AmCham Croatia has been partnering with AmCham Finland for already several years in supporting our members to expand their business to the US. Warm welcome to all of you, to our members, to our guests who received information from the Croatian Chamber of Commerce, and also our thanks to Croatian Chamber of Commerce for supporting this event. For the first time in several years of our regular talks about the US market, Mike Lysico, Director of Launchpad USA, could not join us in person. But Mike, warm welcome in this virtual setting, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Mike will give us information about bringing your business into US, but I'm very happy that today we shall also host Mr. Marko Andrijanic, Director of Anicon Aerospace, with broad experience in working on the US market, and Mr. Siniša Prugovečki, General Manager, Metroteka. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today as well. I hope that it will be an interactive session. So, as Jelena already mentioned, you will have a chance to ask questions via chat option or by raising hand. And then Jelena will unmute your mic. After this long introduction, Mike, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you here online. I wish I was in Croatia. In fact, it was 4 years ago. This time was my first trip down, and I've always enjoyed my visits. My goal this morning is to introduce to you the Launchpad USA program. I'm also going to share with you kind of my top 5 tips, I guess you could say, that I would like to share for companies that are interested in bringing their business to the U.S. market. And I'll give you a little very brief update on what the results of the U.S. presidential election mean for transatlantic business. And then we're going to have a nice Q&A session with Marko and Siniša to wrap things up. I believe I'll be taking questions. I don't see any chat box, Jelena, so if there's any questions, please do interrupt me.
I will do it, so you will see it because you're sharing full screen the presentation. Okay. But don't worry, I'll take care of that.
Okay, great. So as Andrea mentioned, I'm here in Finland. I'm an American. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I've worked in technology for Silicon Valley technology companies. I've also worked in finance at Morgan Stanley. And I've been running the Launchpad USA program for the last 7 years here in Finland and with Croatian companies and also with a few other AmChams in Europe for the last 4 or so years. So I've had experience with well over 100 companies bringing their business to the US market. Really what Launchpad USA is, we're a market entry platform, and our aim is to support the long-term success of member companies that are looking to bring their business to the US market. How do we do that? There's really 3 kind of pillars to the program. First, it starts with our expertise or our advice or guidance that we provide directly to the companies. In my experience is each company's needs are unique. And so what we try to do is have a very tailored approach to solving the specific issues that your company might be facing and helping develop a plan that meets your company's specific objectives. The other part of it is our targeted network to our network of, we call them our US specialists. So we have a very robust, strong network of partners in the US to support your business as you bring it into the US and also are looking to grow and expand your business. And this is really important because operating in the US is a complex endeavor. And so having partners there to support you and partners that we trust, that we know will provide good service and good value to you when you need it is very important. So that's the other thing we'll do is make connections to the US, our partners as needed. And then also we offer ongoing programs or events where we help develop skills and knowledge that you need to succeed in the US. It's through events like this that we want to keep the people who are operating the companies up to date on what's happening in the U.S. markets. And I believe it was mentioned earlier, this is a program, Launchpad USA, that we offer to members of AmCham Croatia, as we do here in Finland, to members of AmCham Finland. So if you're not a member but are interested in the U.S. markets, it would be good to talk with Andrea or Jelena, and I'm happy to join the discussion at the appropriate time. So real quickly, what I would like to do, because we have 1 hour for this whole session this morning, is share with you, again, my kind of 5 tips that I would offer to any company that is interested in bringing their business to the U.S. markets. This is, again, based on my experiences of having worked with a wide range of companies. And it's important to note, too, we work with everything from early stage startup companies, there might be just 2 people, all the way up to very mature, privately owned businesses that have been in business for decades and might have turnover in the hundreds of millions. And then, of course, everything in between. I understand there are exceptions to almost all the rules. So let's just move forward with it. The first one, and I put this as number 1 because ultimately the goal of going to the US is to grow your business, to attract new customers. And so what I always tell companies is to take ownership of your business development activities. One of the most common complaints I will get from companies that have been operating in the US for years is that their business isn't growing the way they want to. And usually this is the result of an over-reliance on distributors, or it might be somebody you happen to know who lives in the US and is able to work there, who is, quote unquote, representing your business. And so what I tell companies is that you take ownership of your business development activities. Selling your product or service in the US for the first time will be very, very difficult. There are resources available to help you accelerate the beginning of those sale processes. I think Sinisha might share with you his experiences a little bit, but getting yourself into the market, talking to customers is very important. So that's something you need to do yourself. Just to give you a quick example of a company here in Finland that I've worked with over the last year, they make pet care products or accessories for dogs, collars, harnesses, things like that. And the CEO of the company wanted to sell their products at PetSmart or Petco, which are these large, box retailers of pet products. So she went online to LinkedIn and looked at all the employees in LinkedIn for PetSmart and saw that there were over 10,000. Then she came across Chewy.com, which is the world's largest online retailer of pet products, and they only had 1,400 or 1,400 employees. So what she did is she sent LinkedIn messages to all 1,400 employees, and sure enough, it was a warehouse manager in one of their Florida warehouses who responded to her. And she would always say greetings from Finland in this case. And this person happened to be in Finland years ago on a Baltic cruise and forwarded her address and information to the purchasing manager of her product. And several months later, Chewy.com made a large order, and now their products are on Chewy.com. Since then, they've gone into Walmart and other large box retailers. But it just goes to show there are ways now, especially in the COVID environment, where you don't necessarily have to go to the US to sell your products or services. So taking ownership and not outsourcing that responsibility at the beginning is very important. The second one is location. You have to remember that the United States is one market under one currency, more or less one language, English, but you do have 50 states. Which means you have 50 different tax jurisdictions, you have 50 different, labor, environmental laws that you have to operate in, 50 different reporting requirements if you're doing business in those states. So there are several ways to think about this. One is where you might register your company, and then where you might locate your business eventually. those don't have to be the same location. Kind of pre-COVID, what a good rule of thumb was to look at a location that's in close proximity to your customer, especially if your product or service requires you to be close to your customers for the purposes of selling, and then of course the support. Post-COVID, it's we'll see how things work out, but generally speaking, operating from the East Coast versus the West Coast is going to be a little easier for your business given the time difference between Croatia and the US for communications. And Marko might speak to this a little bit when we hear from him. But we see companies that operate from the East Coast. Generally, the communications are a little better between the parent company here in Europe and their subsidiary in the US. The other thing to think about too are labor costs. If you're looking to build a team in the US, there is quite a wide range in terms of cost of labor, cost of living, which will of course impact your overhead costs. So New York City has often been a favorite destination for companies, but hiring a senior sales representative in Manhattan is going to be very, very expensive, whereas you might get somebody at maybe half the price, if you hire somebody in a market like Charlotte, North Carolina, or down in Atlanta, Georgia. So just understanding that the cost to operate your business is going to vary greatly from state to state, and even within states, from city to city. The third thing is focus. Back to the business development activities, because the US market is just so large and so expansive, one of the first things you want to think about is what segment of the market you want to focus your sales and marketing efforts on at the very beginning. What's going to be your beachhead market, if you may. And so there's generally 3 areas in which you can look at segmenting the market. It could be by geography, it could be by industry, and it could be by company size. And then using a combination of those 3. And what I've experienced is the companies who go through the exercise of really segmenting the market and finding that initial market, niche market that they want to approach at the very beginning is going to help them accelerate their entry into the US market from a business development standpoint. And what the results are is you're going to better understand what your customers' needs are, how your product or services is positioned or received, who are your competitors. Again, related to that, one of the things that I've seen, especially with software type companies coming from Europe, is that here in Europe, their software or their service or technology, whatever it might be, is very unique. It's very new. So there's really not much competition, but they go to the US, there might be 6, 7, 8 other companies doing pretty much the same thing they're doing. So they have to then learn how to compete. So again, segmentation, looking at very small markets to break into is a much more efficient way to do it. Again, my experiences tell me that it'll help accelerate your entry. So the fourth thing is, I put scale smartly. The other way you could look at it is invest in proportion to the opportunity you have. There's kind of generally a path that I see companies take that works, quite well. It's easy to register a company in the US and more or less easy to set the basic operational infrastructure up. And so what I often tell companies is that if you don't have a customer base in the US, you can start selling without having a presence. I referenced this case of the Finnish company selling their dog accessory products into the US through LinkedIn. But there are ways you can start to test the market without having to set up heavy infrastructure there. Obviously, travel is not possible, but hopefully next year, sometime in the middle of the year, travel will start to resume again. And so utilizing things like the B visa, I don't believe Croatia is part of the visa waiver program, but you can obtain B visas where you can go to the US to develop your business. You can meet customers, you could attend trade shows or conferences where you can start to meet customers, test the demand for your product or service, and then based on that, you can actually, if you have a compelling enough product or service, US customers will be willing to either buy from you directly from your Croatian company, I've seen that, or they're willing to wait for you to set up a US company. In some cases, depending on your product or service, your customers in the US might not be ready to buy from you until you have a registered company in the US. And this is really because of the, how would I say, the potential that things might go bad in the relationship. And so if there's potential lawsuits or conflicts, US customers generally want those to be under US jurisdiction. And so if that's the case, then you can more or less quickly register a company in the US, either a limited liability corporation or a C corporation, which is also known as an Inc. Registering those companies can be done really in just a matter of a couple of days if needed. And so what I often tell companies is, again, test the waters, either when you can travel there, try to sell your product or service. And if your product or services is compelling enough, your customers, again, will either buy directly from you here in Europe, or they will ask you to set up a company and they'll be willing to wait for you to do that. You can set the company up, obtain local insurances, and start selling through that entity. That all can be done very quickly. So just think about approaching the market in that way. I apologize if I'm going through this too quickly. I'm just trying to be aware of time here. And the fifth one is have a plan. I know this sounds obvious, but oftentimes I don't see companies really think about their kind of, their 6-month plan, their 12-month, 2-year, and 5-year plan. And really related to this, there's two areas that I see companies kind of get hung up on in terms of the execution because they haven't planned these things out far enough ahead of time. One is the visas. I mentioned the B visas, which are an excellent resource for you to use when going there to develop the market, if you want to say it that way. But there are other visas, L visas, E visas, which will allow you to go there and stay for a longer period of time. Sometimes these visas can take a while to obtain. Often lawyers need to get involved with helping with the application. And again, what I see companies often kind of overlook is the time, the scope of time that it takes to apply and get approved for these types of visas. So plan well enough ahead of, start thinking, 6 months out, identifying employees that are eligible, for example, for the L1 visa, things like that. The other thing that often takes a lot longer for companies to execute on is in hiring their employees, especially if it's a senior kind of business development type person. Identifying the person and recruiting them often takes a lot longer than expected. And so related to hiring kind of your first employee, obviously you can use recruiters. That's one way you can do it. You can use, again, LinkedIn, for example, is a good thing. And one of the best practices I've seen from companies is that they've started to build their network and identify people very, very early on, even when they think, okay, we don't need to hire somebody, but they already start looking for those people who they would like to have work for their company. Generally, it's good if you can find somebody who has experience working with a European company in the US, because they're going to be familiar with the cultural differences. They're going to be familiar with the how would I say, the dynamic of having to communicate between the US and Europe. And so finding those people as early on and starting the dialogue with them is usually a good thing to do. So those are the top 5 things. I know they were really fast. I'm happy to answer any questions. Real quickly, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the presidential election. Immigration, which I was just talking about, we expect to see a dramatic shift in immigration policy under a Biden presidency. President Trump was very restrictive on many visas. Some of the visas simply went away or were not available. Things like the L visa, which is a great visa for business executives to use to really set up a US company and to ramp up their operations. That's a great visa. That was not available under Trump for the last couple of years. Obviously, COVID has made things further complicated, but because of his America First agenda, the L visa went away. We expect the L visa to come back under Biden. We're also expecting the entrepreneur visa to come back under Biden. This was something that President Obama established, and under Trump, it more or less vanished. So we expect the ability to obtain these visas for you to go and to really set up and run your business in the U.S. to come back. That's one of the most significant things that we expect to see. Generally speaking, we expect to have a warmer relationship between the U.S. and Europe. Our hope is that a transatlantic trade agreement will be reached under a Biden presidency. It's also our hope that these tariffs, especially in the areas of steel and aluminum, will go away, and so that friction that is there now will go away under the Biden administration. So those are some of the things that we expect to see more or less immediately, and hopefully will have a positive impact on your ability to go to the U.S. market to do business. So with that, I thank you for your attention. I hope it was clear. I'm happy to answer any questions, and hope to have the opportunity to work with you if you're planning to bring your business to the U.S. markets. With that, I guess, Yelena, we could bring in Marco and Sinisha.
Yes, that's okay.
Yep.
As agreed.
And I will stop sharing my screen here, so bear with me here. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay. Maybe I see Marco first, so maybe Marco, if you don't mind introducing yourself and telling us about your company.
Okay, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in this discussion. So my name is Marko Andrijanic. Croatian, we have a company, it's called Enikon Aerospace, and I'm the CEO of the company. The company, we are specialized in interior finishing of components inside the aircrafts, commercial and business. So when you're flying, usually all the components that are there for you, like sidewalls, ceiling panels, bin doors, various partitions, are mostly finished by our company. We are a classical service provider, so we are not manufacturing any products. We are just providing the finish, the components. So we were quite strong in Europe. We can proudly say that we are doing also, I would say, 90% of all Airbus components. And the reason why we decided to go to the US is that we wanted to expand the market. Today in the aerospace industry, we have two big players. One is Airbus and the other is Boeing. And we wanted to start doing business with Boeing. And this is the reason why we went to the US.
Okay. And from our earlier discussions, I know you set up a fairly significant operation in California. Can you begin by just sharing with us what are the reasons for you setting your business up in California?
So first of all, in our business, you have to be quite close to the customers because there are daily deliveries and pickups from our customers to finish the components. And one of the major customers was in California. It was a company specialized in producing complete interiors. And this is the reason why we decided to open the location in California. The location we opened was in Garden Grove. We started in 2011. And quite quickly, we grew to 60 employees. So I think in less than a year, we came from 0 and we grew to 60 employees.
Okay. And what were your experiences in hiring and employing these people in the U.S.? How was that process?
First of all, we decided to come to California because quite strong expatriate base. So we applied for e-visas and then for L visas for the operation managers. So just to give a short experience on visas, first we had to hire a lawyer in the US for that. It's quite costly. And there is a lot of documentation that you have to provide to the embassy. Decision is on the embassy, so there is the interview with each employee that will have to go there, and there was also quite a big interview with me as the CEO of the company, and it was quite a big experience in those days. And then when we came there, we started hiring the local people. So as you think about mostly about blue collars, so it's workers in production. So as it is California, it was mostly a lot of Mexican people. So here what I can say is there is we found quite a good cultural match between Mexican and Croatian. Both of them are Catholics, they are quite family oriented, and most of them are quite hardworking people. So what I can say here also is that in the US, it's all about the money. So usually the hourly rate or the costs are quite important. And usually, this is my experience, that blue collars usually have 2 or 3 jobs to support their families. So it's if they get paid more and do the other work, they will go to another employer. This is my experience.
Okay, so the financial incentives were quite strong for them.
Yes.
Yeah. And how about from a regulatory standpoint, were there any challenges operating in California?
Yes, there were a lot of challenges. First of all, you have to understand that California, it's called the green state, and we are in painting business, so it doesn't come together. So there were a lot of codes, a lot of city codes. We have to establish a location, we have to invest into the equipment, and we have to remodel the location and set up the equipment. So usually we had a lot of misunderstandings about the codes, what we have to do. Then the permits were also quite a regulatory challenge. And then we spend a lot of money on insurance. So insurance is quite a big thing in California. And then when having negotiations with the customers for the contracts, in the aerospace, there are quite a long and big contracts, but in the US, we're even bigger and more complex than in Europe.
Okay.
This is
Now
especially the legal side of the contract. So commercial and technical side, it's quite easy, but the legal side is quite complicated. You have to also pay quite experienced lawyers to really explain you all the risks behind.
Okay. So I imagine the lawyer bills when they came in were maybe a little shock at the beginning.
Yes, it was quite shocking.
Yes, yeah, that's very, very common. Now I understand you have closed down, or I guess suspended your operations because of the Boeing 737 MAX problems. And at some point, do you plan to reestablish your operations in the US?
Well, yes, we are planning to. It's not a short-term goal. It's more like a long-term goal. And for my business, for manufacturing, we are thinking about opening also back location, but not in California, because we find California is too expensive, especially for manufacturing activities. When you talk about manufacturing activities, we are much more focused on the middle part of the US, from Texas all the way to, I think, Utah. This middle region is much more cost effective in comparison to California, and especially I would say also the East Coast is quite expensive for manufacturing activities.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, that cost of labor and also regulations. California generally is seen as a very unfriendly state for businesses.
Yes.
And so different states have different attitudes towards businesses.
Yes. What you notice,
Yep.
the Dallas region, this region is really booming, and there are a lot of opportunities in that area, especially to get a good business case behind, because housing, the land, everything is much cheaper than in California. And then also, as you also mentioned, every state has its own tax policy, so it's quite challenging now in California, because the rates are going up and the cost of living are going up almost on a yearly basis.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Marco. I see Sinisha here, and
Mike, may
yeah.
I interrupt, because we have some questions? So just to check, would you like to continue with Sinisha, because maybe you will answer some of them as you speak, and then we can go, or to ask them now?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm having a hard time seeing the chat
That's
box.
okay, don't worry, I will read them out. So just checking if you would like to maybe talk to Sinisha first, because maybe you will answer some of the questions with Sinisha example. Well, actually, let's do it this way. Sinisha's example is great, because Metroteka just recently. So let's continue with Sinisha, and then I will read the questions. Don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you, Yelena, and apologies for overlooking the questions.
No, that's my responsibility. Don't worry about it.
Oh, it's okay. So good to see you, Sinisha. So I have a little bit more experience with your activities in the U.S., and I know you've been to the U.S. To start getting your operations up and running. I know you originally you have a registered company in Delaware. You set it up as a limited liability, but converted it to a C Corp. So maybe can you first share with us, why did you register your company in Delaware? And also, why did you convert it from an LLC, a limited liability, to an Inc. or C Corp? And can you tell us a little bit about your company? Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to say I will tell you something about my company first, because it's a little bit connected to the decisions that I made regarding Delaware and LLC and everything else. So I'm coming from the company called Metroteka. It is a local company in Zagreb. It was established a little bit than 10 years ago. And our business is basically in quality, in two parts of quality related stuff. One thing, and our main part of the business, is calibrating measuring instruments, and we are doing that for many different industries. And right now we might be a little bit more interesting to the general public, because we are accredited to do the low temperature calibrations at -70 and so on, which is a really hot stuff right now because of the vaccines for COVID-19. So, for example, if pharmaceutical distributors want to check their conditions in which they hold and transport the vaccines, they would go to us. But we work for all other kinds of industries, construction, forensics, etc. And the other part is consulting about the processes, and mainly it is about, if many people probably heard about the Six Sigma and the Lean Six Sigma tools. And that's what we can do locally. But now I'm going to the US part of the story. So while we were working for our local customers in Croatia and neighboring countries, we saw that there is a huge opportunity to improve how people take care of their measuring instruments. And most production companies have at least hundreds of them. and it's for no company it's a very the part of their operations that they spend a lot of time in, but it's very, very important because if something goes wrong with measuring their products, then there could be a lot of loss in terms of money. And so we saw an opportunity that we can make an application that can do all those things much better with networking and cloud and so on. And we saw that for the first time we have an opportunity to make a global product where we don't have to go physically to people, or people don't have to come to us to sell them something that could be very, very valuable to them. And then, of course, we started talking about which country it would be, and we decided on the US because it's the biggest market for this kind of apps in the world. And of course, having a center or headquarters of for operations in the US is very good for all other parts of the world to look at your company. And so we decided to go to the US, and then it was a little bit of luck that you came to Croatia at the same moment, and we started working with you, and you helped us a lot. So now I'm going to tell the answer on the question that you asked, and that's why we decided to register our company in Delaware, and first as an LLC and later as a C Corp. First of all, these two entities, LLC and C Corp, are similar to some entities in business entities in Europe, but not exactly the same. So LLC would be something in Croatia we would call that obrt, and C Corp would be a corporation like DO. As Mark already said, the legal part of doing business in the US is very, very complicated. And we had help from the lawyers how to do the registering as good as possible for us. And we wanted to organize the operations before they would start. And this is why we decided to originally register the company as an LLC, with bearing in mind that we would later convert it to C Corp. So it was the idea from the very beginning to start as something and then change to something else. And the reason is that an LLC, for LLC, you don't have to pay any taxes before you have any income. And with C Corp, it's not so much, it's not so cheap, and it's not so simple. So we decided to set up the company as LLC until we have any income, and then to change to C Corp, which is much more interesting for investors. And it's easier to do business with the C Corp. And very, very important thing is that C Corp, like corporations here, is a very, very distinct legal entity compared to you as a person. So for many things that LLC would do or have to pay, I, as a person, as an owner, would be responsible as a person. Whereas with C Corp, the corporation itself is responsible with not so much direct connection to you as a person. And why Delaware? Well, most people mean this is because of the taxes, but there are many other states that have smaller and simpler taxes. But Delaware is a state which has the best courts and the best judges and the best experience in legal stuff. So for a foreign company, it's I think there's not much that you don't have to think that much, and you just have to go for Delaware because it's the easiest state to do business if you're not from the US. So, for example, you can have many titles in a company and being a foreign being a foreign from Europe.
Okay. Great explanation of the difference between the LLC and C Corp. And I like how you also, again, scaled up proportionally from the LLC converting to the C Corp. Have you found the US an easy place to operate in? Were there any obstacles or difficulties in setting all of this up, or did it go very smoothly?
Well, first of all, from the movies and so on, I thought that the US would be a very, very easy place to do business in. So you're just doing business without the legal problems and so on. But the reality is totally different. I would say that Europe is easier in with their business laws, and in US everything is very, very different. For start, you cannot translate the legal language into the US business. So I had some experience with setting up companies with partners, but it's totally different experience in the US. So one very strong thing that I would like to say to people who will set up the company: go to the lawyers and be serious about it, and leave this stuff to them. Because we tried very hard to translate directly some relationships from Croatia to United States, and we spent a lot of money on that, but with no effect. So just say in a few words to the lawyers what you want to do, and leave the stuff to them, because you pay them by the hour. And other things is that taxes are much more complicated than anywhere in Europe, and I think that the laws in different states in the US are different, more different than between the countries in the EU. This is my opinion. It might be it's maybe not true, but this is how I feel. And the only thing, and it's very, very important, that stands for United States and the Americans, is that they are very, very eager to do business and to grow and to succeed. So, in fact, the setbacks that you can encounter in the United States are bigger than you can encounter in Europe, but everybody is eager to solve them. And in fact, people will help you. People will help you more than in Europe. In Europe, it is customary when you ask somebody from a different company that doesn't have to do anything with you to help you with something, he will probably first be a little suspicious. But in the United States, people are much more often, and they much more open, and they need to be to deal with all the complications of the legal and tax system. And that's what I think about it. Yeah, great for sharing that. Would you say, given the complex tax structure, because as you alluded to, you have different state taxes, and even within states, you have different tax rates in different counties. And as a seller of a product or service, you're required to withhold those taxes at the right level and report those. So would you say, in addition to having a good lawyer, it's also good to having a good accounnt working with you from the very beginning? Yeah, that's right. I think that in the United States, you need you need much more of some kind of support network around you, which includes lawyers and accountants and insurance companies and many other things. But the taxes are so complicated that we actually have two different companies handling the taxes for us, one for the state taxes and the other for the federal taxes. And it's actually, I'm not expert on that, so I cannot explain very well what is the difference. I'm just happy when they do stuff for us and we don't have to think about it.
Yeah, okay. I think, thank you, Marko, and also thank you, Siniša, for sharing your experiences. Looks like we have about 12 minutes. Jelena, should we open up some questions?
Yes. Yeah, we already have some, so I'm gonna read them to you. So
Okay.
Marco Cook is the CEO of Alpha Applications. Alpha Applications is a company that provides services in web development, web design, web apps, and they already have clients in US, Canada, Australia, EU, but they would like to expand more in the US market. So he already has some contacts in the US, and his plan is also to visit California in January. And he's asking what is the best way to contact the potential clients and partners and arrange the meetings.
So in my experiences, direct phone calls and emails are the best way to contact potential clients. And also it's important when you're planning to go to the US to reconfirm any appointments or meetings that you've already agreed upon. Generally speaking, people's schedules change, and you don't want to go to the US and show up and have a lot of meetings canceled at the last minute, which happens. So emails and phone calls, and then also when you agree or confirm a meeting, to confirm the meeting at least a couple times, at least, before you go. And also I would recommend at least 24 hours before the meeting to reconfirm those meetings. I don't know if Marco or Sinisha have any experiences in that, or any opinions if they want to share.
Well, I agree with that, and from my experience, I also came to some meetings and they just forgot about the meetings. So I think that emails and phone call, and especially a phone call maybe 24 hours or a day before the meeting, it's a good way.
Yeah. And
No,
one final thing. Sorry, go ahead, Sinisha.
No, I just wanted to say that I would agree with Marco that phone call is very, very important. And as you mentioned, LinkedIn is a very, very good tool, because people can see your face from the beginning, and it doesn't look like spam.
Yeah. One little tip I got from a couple entrepreneurs who would go to the US regularly when we could travel was they would always leave one open day at the very end. They would book their meetings early on their visit and then leave an open day at the end, because if those meetings would get canceled, that they could try to reschedule them for the last day of their visit so that they didn't miss out on the opportunity. So think about how you schedule your time in the US too, and try to front load it with meetings, leaving a little open time at the back end.
Okay, thank you. Laura Pleshko has a question. She says, I have a small IT company and our clients are from the US, but we want to grow and find more clients. We don't have a product. We are a software design and development agency. Does it make sense to use your services? So I think, Mike, this is maybe a good opportunity to explain a little bit what is it that Launchpad USA can support them with, and what is it that it will not support them with. So maybe just to clarify a little bit, how can Launchpad USA help them?
Laura, I mean, this is a case where we often get involved, exactly where you have clients in the US. You think there's more of an opportunity. So it sounds like you're at that point where you could make the decision to invest a little more money and time into the US market and setting up some level of presence there. And we could talk about what those options would mean. And it could support accelerating your business development activity. So I think it does make sense to use the services. I would like to talk a little more in depth in terms of, how big is your current customer base and what does your sales funnel look like? But I've worked with software design agencies in the past, and they've done quite well in the US. So I think it could make sense, yes.
Okay, thank you. Tomislav Lozušić is asking, we partly commented on this, but maybe a little bit more detail. Which are the most entrepreneur-friendly states? Which you would recommend for setting up a company?
Does either Marco or Sinisha want to take this first, based on their experiences? And I can jump in.
Well, I think it depends where your customers are. That's one thing, but I'd say California is a quite entrepreneur state, but I think the legal things and all these regulatory standpoints are quite complex. In terms of ease, I think more in the way of Texas. This is my comment.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think if you want to set up a global business and actually do stuff from Croatia, I saw that there's another question about it. I think that Delaware is the state to choose because of the things that I already said. Ease of doing business and ease of solving problems when they arise.
Yeah.
Yes, but you never come to Delaware. Delaware is just your box.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. If I understand the question correctly in terms of entrepreneur-friendly states, California is generally seen as very friendly towards entrepreneurs. You know, you have a place like Silicon Valley, which is a great ecosystem for entrepreneurs to develop their new ideas. There are other places in the U.S. that are very entrepreneur-friendly. But in terms of setting up a company, if I understand, registering your company, as Sinisha mentioned, look at a place like Delaware to register your company. But as I said very early on, you can register in Delaware, but you can locate yourself anywhere in the U.S. So I would say if you're looking for financing, whether it be angel investments or venture capital funding, you would want to go to a state like California, maybe New York or Boston. But again, it also depends on what industry do you operate in. But that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you. Antonia Fonovic is saying, good morning. What is the possibility to set up a business entity in the US that will be run out of Croatia? We would like to set a business entity that would be importing the products. They are all UL certified. We are manufacturing in Croatia and would be selling them to electrical distributors all over the US. What are the requirements to set up a C Corp? Do we have to have a particular visa? Can the director be a foreigner that is not a US resident? Does he have to have an SSN?
I could jump in here. So do you have to have a visa? No, you don't have to have a visa. You could set up a C Corp really online or with an attorney's help. The directors can be a foreigner. You don't have to have a social security number. So again, registering a company in the US is very easy. You could do it through either a registered agent, which is a requirement in the state of Delaware. I know we talk a lot about Delaware, but you could do it online or with an attorney. You don't need to go there yourself to do it. So it's rather easy. And then when you say, can you run it from Croatia? Well, I think you can with local support, with local legal and accounting support, because once you register your company, the next thing you'll do is you'll register for your employer identification number, your tax number with the IRS. And once you do that, you're at least obligated to do annual tax filings, even if you're not generating revenue. So again, you're going to want to have local support, legal accounting for tax filing purposes, and you can theoretically run it from Croatia, like I believe Sinisha is.
Yeah, exactly. I done everything like Antonia would like to do. So all the answers are very, very easy.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So that's good news for Antonia, definitely. Karlo Matkovic has a question. He says, we're a small company and we produce stoves for domestic and industrial use. We have innovative products and we are looking for a foreign investor because we are not able to finance R&D and production. Any advice about searching for investors?
Yeah, my advice, there's a lot of ways to answer this. One of the things I also do is I'm an active angel investor in US technology startups. what I would do is put together, you know, your pitch deck or kind of a you know, one pager about the investment opportunity. And if you're looking for U.S. investors, there are investment groups you can go to, and you know, there's like AngelList, there's different crowdfunding platforms that are supported by accredited investors, and you can go there and find what they call syndicate leads and present the investment opportunity, and these syndicate leads could then present it to their backers, their limited partners. That's what I would do if I was you, to find an investor in the U.S., an angel investor who's a syndicate lead, who can then present your company and the investment opportunity to a larger network of investors. And again, AngelList is a good platform to do that on. There's a few others. I think one's called Republic, and a few others. So hope that helps. And if it doesn't, you can email me directly and we could discuss some more ideas.
Okay, thank you. Ivana Rimac is saying we are planning to open a company in Delaware, which would import Croatian wine and sell it in New York, New Jersey. Would that be a good combination? What are the areas we need to pay better attention to?
I think that could be a good combination. You could register an LLC in Delaware. My understanding, I haven't been too involved with alcohol sales, but my understanding is you'll need to sell through a local distributor who has a license to sell. So that would be important for you to find that local distributor who has, again, the license to sell the wines. And then it's a matter of you, you know, convincing this local seller distributor to carry your product in their wider offering. So that's the big thing. And then also looking at what are the possible, I don't know if there are, but possible, you know, how are you going to ship it over? Who's importing the wine? And are there any taxes or tariffs in place on what Croatian wines coming into the U.S.? So I think the logistics and the distribution are going to be the key areas to look at for your business.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So far, no other questions. I would like to invite if anybody has any additional questions, please. Now is the time, because we are kind of running out of time, but we would like to answer all the questions. So please feel free to either type it or just raise your hand, and I will unmute you so we don't spend any more typing. Okay, so Tihomir is saying, any advice concerns related to opening a web shop that's targeting USA market, selling Croatian products in particular fashion?
Okay, so a couple things. Anytime you're consumer facing, you want to make sure from a product liability standpoint that all your labeling and markings or claims are validated, and they're they're acceptable for the U.S. standards. The U.S. is a very litigious society, or Americans are, so you want to make sure you don't get sued. So anything you're selling to consumers, to make sure that, again, the products are reviewed from a safety standpoint. That's the important thing there. You might want to think about setting up a U.S. registered company in the event that there's some legal dispute, so that legal dispute or the risk of doing business is isolated to the U.S. market, that it doesn't affect your Croatian or European or international operations. So, you know, when I tell companies anything selling to consumers is to make sure that it's in accordance with local safety laws, and the packaging, the instructions, if there are any labeling or claims, I don't know exactly what you're selling, are all reviewed and kind of approved by U.S. attorneys, so you don't run the risk of getting sued for anything there. Just yeah. So again, happy to answer those questions. I see somebody's asking for my contact information.
Yes.
I'm happy to share that. And again, if I'm happy to work with members of AmCham Croatia. So if you're already a member, Jelena can put you in touch with me. And if you're not a member, I recommend, I'm happy to have a discussion with you, but also bringing in Jelena to have those discussions, and we can go from there.
Okay, just to answer Antonia's question. Antonia, when you choose to chat, I told you to choose option to everyone. If you choose the option to host, you can send me your email address and maybe mobile phone number, and then I will make sure to contact you and to agree on the details. So, are there any other questions? We don't want to hold you. We would like especially to thank the speakers, today's speakers. So Mike, thank you very much. Marco, Siniša, and here is Andrea also thanking you and for a great session and sharing your experience. I believe this is very useful, opening the door to kind of speak that way to people, providing them with at least basic informations. So thank you very much once again for your help and your time. We're hoping that it was useful and that there will be people joined and interested in joining the US market will have the success. So it's not easy. We know that. We saw it from your examples, but as we can conclude, it's definitely worth a try. And we're going to keep our fingers crossed and of course support in any way you can. Even if you're not our members, please feel free to contact, and if you think this is useful, I'm sure we can agree and find a way. So please don't the fact that you are not AmCham member stop you. So if we can support you, we will definitely find a way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jelena. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.